Some folks say hell is fire and brimstone. I say hell is a train that never reaches its destination. Let me tell you about the night I met the 333 Express. About the passengers who don't know they're dead. About the choice I had to make between damnation and salvation. And how sometimes they're the same thing. This happened about 6 months after I started my wandering, after I chose to stay in these bones to help the cursed and the lost. I was riding through the Sonoran stretch, following the old railroad tracks that haven't seen a working train in 40 years. The locals, they don't go near those tracks after midnight. Smart folks, they know better. But I heard stories in the last town, stories about passengers who board a train and never come home, about families waiting at stations for loved ones who will never arrive. That's the kind of story that gets my attention. That's the kind of curse I understand. The first 2 nights, nothing happened, just empty tracks stretching into darkness. Old ties rotting in the sand, rails so rusted you'd think they couldn't carry anything heavier than a strong wind. I waited by an old water tower, patient as only the dead can be patient. Third night, I heard it. Faint at first, so faint I thought it might be the wind. But the wind doesn't sound like steel wheels on steel rails. The wind doesn't have a rhythm like a heartbeat, getting closer, getting louder, getting real. At exactly 3:33 in the morning, the train came. It appeared out of nothing, out of darkness itself, like it was pushing through a curtain between worlds. An old steam locomotive, the kind they stopped making before I died the first time, black as midnight and gleaming like it had just rolled out of the factory. But here's the thing that made my bones rattle. There was no smoke from the smokestack, no steam, no coal smell, no heat shimmer in the air. This train was running on something else entirely. Something that had nothing to do with fire or water or any kind of fuel the living understand. It slowed as it approached, wheels screeching on those rusted rails that somehow held its weight. 3 passenger cars, windows lit with warm yellow light. And through those windows, I could see them. People, dozens of people, sitting in their seats, reading newspapers, talking to each other, looking for all the world like ordinary passengers on an ordinary train. Except I knew better. I've been dead long enough to recognize my own kind. The train stopped right in front of me, and a door opened. Not by itself, mind you. Someone opened it. A conductor stepped out, old black man in a pressed uniform, pocket watch in hand, looking at me with eyes that had seen too much and somehow not enough. "Evenin'," he said, voice smooth as aged whiskey. "Train's running on schedule. You boarding or just watching?" I should have walked away right then. Should have let it pass. Let it carry its cargo of the damned to wherever the damned go when they don't know they're damned. But that's not what I do anymore. Not what I chose to do. "What is this?" I asked, though I already knew. "Where's it going?" The conductor smiled, sad and knowing. This here's the 333 Express. Been running this route for, 70 years now, give or take. As for where it's going, he looked down the tracks into that darkness the train had come from. Nowhere good, friend. Nowhere good at all. And the passengers? Most of them don't know they're on it. Most of them think they're heading home, heading to visit family, heading to start new lives in new cities. They bought tickets, boarded at stations that don't exist anymore, and they've been riding ever since. He checked his pocket watch, though I noticed the hands weren't moving. Some of them are starting to suspect, though. Starting to notice that the journey's taking too long, that the scenery outside never changes, that they're getting hungry, but there's no dining car, getting tired, but can't seem to sleep. Those ones, they're the dangerous ones, the ones who are waking up to what they are. I looked past him into the train car. An old woman knitting in the front row. A young couple holding hands. A businessman with his briefcase. A little boy pressing his face against the window, watching me with wide eyes. That little boy, he waved at me. Just a small wave, innocent, hopeful, and something in my hollow chest ached. What happens when they figure it out? I asked. When they realize they're dead. The conductor's face went darker. That's when the train takes them. Really takes them. Right now, they're in limbo, suspended between acceptance and denial. But once they know, once they truly understand, the train delivers them to their final destination. And friend, you don't want to know what that destination looks like. Can they get off? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. There's always a price. There's always a choice. But most folks, by the time they understand they have a choice to make, they're too far gone to make the right one. The train whistle blew, long and mournful, a sound that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than the locomotive, somewhere older. Last call, the conductor said. You boarding or not? Dead man like you, you'd fit right in. Might even find some peace, riding forever, never having to face what comes after. And here's where it gets strange, friend. Here's where I almost made a terrible mistake. Because for just a second, just a heartbeat I didn't have, I considered it. Considered stepping onto that train, finding a seat, letting it carry me away from choices and consequences and the hard work of redemption. The train was offering me an escape, a way to stop wandering, stop fighting, stop trying to be better than the monster I used to be. It would be so easy, so peaceful, so final. The little boy was still watching me through the window, still waving, and I wondered if he knew, if somewhere deep down he understood he was dead, understood he was trapped, and was begging me with that small wave to help him. That's what made up my mind. I'm not boarding, I told the conductor, but I need to talk to your passengers. I need to warn them. The conductor's expression changed. Not angry exactly, but resigned. Like he'd heard this before. Like he knew how this would go. Can't let you do that, friend. Rules are rules. The passengers ride until they figure it out themselves, or until the train decides they've ridden long enough. Outside interference isn't permitted. Permitted by who? By whatever it is that runs this railroad. And trust me, you don't want to meet the management. The train whistle blew again, more insistent this time. The conductor stepped back onto the stairs. We're leaving now. You can board or step back, but either way, this train is pulling out. I could have let it go, should have let it go, but I thought about that little boy, about all those passengers who didn't know they were riding to damnation, about the choice I'd made to help instead of hurt. I stepped onto the train. The conductor's eyes went wide. You sure about this? No, I said honestly, but I'm doing it anyway. The door closed behind me with a sound like a coffin lid sealing shut. The train lurched forward, and suddenly we were moving, picking up speed, rails singing beneath us as we rolled back into that darkness we'd come from. Inside the passenger car, nobody reacted to my entrance. The old woman kept knitting. The couple kept whispering to each other. The businessman kept staring at papers he wasn't really reading. Only the little boy turned to look at me fully, and I saw something in his eyes that confirmed what I'd suspected. He knew. On some level, he knew. I walked down the aisle, my boots making no sound on the threadbare carpet, my bones casting strange shadows in the yellow light. The other passengers ignored me, or couldn't see me, or had convinced themselves I wasn't there. But the boy watched every step I took. I sat down across from him. His mother was next to him, asleep, her head against the window. She'd been asleep a long time, I could tell. Maybe the whole journey. Maybe she'd chosen sleep over knowing. "What's your name, son?" I asked. "Timothy," he said, voice small but steady. "Timothy Fletcher. Are you a skeleton?" Direct. I liked that. "I am." "Are you dead?" "Yes." "Am I dead too?" The question hung in the air between us. I could have lied, probably should have lied, but I've done too much lying in my existence, even when the lies were merciful. "Yes," I said. "I think you are." He nodded, like I'd confirmed something he'd already known. "I thought so. I remember. I was sick, real sick. Mama was crying. And then I woke up here, and she said we were going to visit Grandma. But I don't think that's true. I don't think Grandma is where we're going." "You're a smart boy, Timothy. Where are we really going?" I looked out the window, at the darkness rushing past. Not desert darkness, not night darkness. This was something else, something deeper, a void that had never known light. Somewhere bad, Somewhere you don't want to be. Can we get off? I don't know, I admitted, but I'm going to try to find out. The train was picking up speed now, going faster than any steam locomotive should be able to go, faster than physics should allow. The lights flickered. The other passengers stirred uneasily, starting to notice something was wrong, even if they couldn't name what. The businessman looked up from his papers, confused. How long have we been traveling? I can't remember boarding. The old woman stopped knitting, staring at her hands like they belonged to someone else. My daughter. She was supposed to meet me at the station. That was... how long ago was that? The couple stopped whispering and looked around, their faces showing the first cracks of realization, the first hints of fear. They were waking up, all of them. And according to the conductor, that meant the train would take them, really take them, to whatever final destination waited at the end of this line. I stood up, my bones creaking. "Listen to me," I called out, loud enough to cut through their confusion. "All of you, listen. You're on a train to nowhere. You're dead, and this train is carrying you to judgment, to damnation, to whatever hell it is you earned in life. But you don't have to accept it. You have a choice." The train shuddered. The lights flickered again, longer this time. And somewhere ahead, I heard something. A sound like metal tearing, like reality ripping, like a door opening that should have stayed closed forever. The conductor appeared at the front of the car, no longer calm, no longer collected. "What have you done?" he demanded. "You've woken them up. You've broken the rules." "Good," I said. "Rules that trap souls deserve to be broken." The train was screaming now, metal on metal, a sound that wasn't mechanical, but alive, angry, hungry. The darkness outside the windows was pressing closer, seeping through the glass like smoke, reaching for the passengers who were now standing, panicking, finally understanding what they were. "There's no getting off a moving train," the conductor shouted over the noise. "You've killed them. You've damned them." "Maybe," I said, moving toward the emergency exit at the rear of the car. "Or maybe I've given them a chance. That's more than this train was offering." Timothy grabbed my skeletal hand with his small, solid one. Strange how he could touch me when the others couldn't. Maybe because he'd accepted what he was. Maybe because he'd chosen to see me as I really was. "I'm scared," he said. "Me too, son." "Me too." The emergency exit was locked, but locks don't mean much to someone with no flesh to bruise or break. I kicked it open, and wind rushed in, not desert wind, but something colder, something that smelled like the space between stars, like the bottom of graves, like every goodbye ever spoken. Outside, instead of desert, there was nothing. Just void, just endless falling darkness. The train was suspended over an abyss, tracks extending from nothing to nothing, held up by will alone, by the curse that kept it running. "We have to jump," I said. The businessman backed away. "That's crazy. That's suicide." "You're already dead," I pointed out. "What have you got to lose?" The old woman looked at me with clear eyes, finally, fully awake. Will it hurt? I don't know, I said honestly. But staying on this train will hurt worse. Trust me. The train lurched violently. The darkness outside was bleeding in faster now, tendrils of it reaching for the passengers. The conductor was shouting something, but his words were getting lost in the noise, in the screaming of metal and magic and something older than both. One of the tendrils touched the businessman. He screamed, and where the darkness touched him, he began to come apart. Not into dust like I had when I was freed, but into something worse. Into nothing. Into less than nothing. Now, I shouted. Everyone, now! I didn't wait to see if they followed. I grabbed Timothy and jumped. We fell through darkness. For how long, I couldn't say. Time doesn't work right in the spaces between. Could have been seconds. Could have been centuries. All I know is I held on to that boy, and I thought about every choice I'd made since breaking free of my first curse, every person I'd tried to help, every kindness I'd managed with these skeletal hands. And I thought about Thomas Garrett, about how he'd thanked me while I held him in a death grip, about how that gratitude had broken chains I'd worn for 100 years. Maybe that's what did it. Maybe that memory was strong enough, real enough, solid enough to catch us. We hit something. Not ground exactly, but something that stopped our fall. Sand. Desert sand. Real, normal, beautiful desert sand under a real, normal, beautiful night sky full of stars. I sat up, checking myself. Still bones, still cursed in my own way, but whole, here, real. Timothy sat up next to me, and I saw him clearly for the first time. Not a ghost, not a spirit, but something in between. Solid enough to touch, real enough to feel, but not quite alive, not quite dead. Suspended, like he'd been on the train, but free now, free to choose. Where are we? He asked. The desert, the real one. Did the others make it? I looked around. One by one they appeared, falling out of nothing into sand. The old woman, the couple, even the businessman, though part of him had been taken by that darkness. They landed hard but safe, more or less. Not all of them made it. I could feel the absence of the ones who didn't jump, who stayed on the train, who were carried to whatever destination waited at the end of that line. Maybe a dozen souls I couldn't save. But I saved these few. And maybe that was enough. Timothy's mother appeared last, falling into the sand next to him. She woke slowly, confused, then saw her son and pulled him into her arms, crying, not understanding, but not needing to understand. The old woman stood on shaky legs and looked at me. What happens now? We're dead, but we're here. What does that mean? It means you have time, I said. Time to make peace. Time to say goodbye. Time to choose where you go next, instead of having it chosen for you. The train was taking you to judgment without giving you a chance to judge yourselves. How long do we have? I don't know. Days, maybe. Weeks, if you're lucky. Long enough, hopefully. She nodded, accepting this. Thank you. I don't know what you are or why you helped us, but thank you. I heard a sound then, faint and far away, a train whistle, angry and mournful at once. The 3:33 Express, still running its route, still hunting for passengers, still carrying its cargo to damnation. But not these passengers, not tonight. The conductor appeared one last time, stepping out of shadows that shouldn't have been there, his uniform torn now, his face showing cracks. You've made an enemy tonight, Bone Man. The railroad doesn't forget, doesn't forgive. You stopped one train, saved a handful of souls. There are 1,000 trains running 1,000 routes, carrying millions to their final destinations. You can't stop them all. Maybe not, I said. But I stopped this one, saved these few, and I'll do it again next time I hear those wheels on the tracks. Every single time. He shook his head sadly. You're buying yourself nothing but trouble. Wouldn't be the first time. He faded back into the shadows, and the whistle faded with him, getting farther away, until finally there was just silence and stars and the cold desert wind. Timothy came up to me, his mother behind him, still holding his hand. Will you be all right? He asked. The conductor said you made an enemy. I've made lots of enemies, I said. But I've made some friends too. And I've learned that the second kind matters more than the first. Will I see you again? Maybe. If you need help finishing your business, finding your peace, I'll be around. I'm always around. He hugged me then, this dead boy hugging a skeleton cowboy, and it was one of the strangest and most human moments I'd had since I died. His arms went right through my ribs, but somehow I felt it anyway. They left at dawn, the freed passengers, walking into the desert sunrise, heading for wherever they needed to go to make peace with their deaths. I watched them go, these saved souls, and I felt something I hadn't felt in longer than I could remember. Pride, purpose, the certainty that I'd made the right choice, even if it cost me. The train would come back. The conductor was right about that. There were other trains, other routes, other souls being carried to damnation without knowing it. The railroad was vast and old and patient. But so was I. And I'd learned something important that night. I'd learned that even the most powerful curses have rules. Even the most inevitable damnations have loopholes. Even trains that never stop can be derailed by someone willing to take the risk. And I learned that the dead can be saved if someone cares enough to try. I've heard the 3:33 Express 4 more times since that night. 3 of those times, I let it pass. The passengers weren't ready to be saved, weren't ready to know what they were. Waking them up would have done more harm than good. But the 4th time, there was a girl on board who reminded me of Sarah Garrett, and I boarded that train again and I freed her soul, and I jumped with her into the darkness, and we fell together into sand and starlight. The conductor was right. The railroad doesn't forgive. There are things hunting me now, things that serve whatever dark power runs those midnight trains. I can feel them sometimes, just behind me, just out of sight, waiting for me to make a mistake. But I'm not afraid, not anymore. Fear is for the living, and I'm long past that. All I have now is purpose, and these bones, and the memory of a little boy who waved at me from a train window and gave me a reason to be something more than a cautionary tale. Next time you hear a train whistle in the dead of night, in a place where no train should be running, think of Timothy Fletcher. Think of the old woman who got to say goodbye to her daughter one last time. Think of all the souls riding in darkness, waiting for someone to show them there's another choice. And if you're feeling brave, if you're feeling foolish, if you're feeling like maybe you could make a difference, step onto that train. Wake up the passengers. Break the rules. The railroad will hate you for it. The conductors will curse your name. The things in the darkness will hunt you. But the souls you save will thank you. And friend, there's no better feeling in all of creation than being thanked for doing the right thing, even when the right thing costs you everything. I should know. I'm still paying for it. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat I don't have. So keep your ears open in the desert night. Listen for the 3:33 Express. And if you see a skeleton cowboy boarding a train that shouldn't exist, don't be surprised. That's just me, doing what I chose to do. Saving souls, one train ride at a time. Sweet dreams, friend. And may you never have to ride the railroad to nowhere. But if you do, don't worry. I'll be there.